There are things that we experience in life day to day that just imprint on us in passive ways as a coping mechanism. If we had to cope and process and navigate any non-positive human experience, we wouldn't make it past like 2 years old. Safety mechanisms are there just for survival. They're not there to help you thrive, because I promise you, if you make the intention and you set the space, things will come up.
Mm-hmm.
The work will unfold for you.
The Big Silence. The Big Silence.
Hello and welcome to the Big Silence podcast. This is your host, Karena Dawn. I'm so happy to spend this holiday season with you, whether you are traveling on an airplane, sharing time with family, or wherever you may be, even at home. This is a reminder to download Big Silence anywhere you can listen to podcasts so you don't miss an ep. And also thank you for making us one of the top mental health and self-development podcasts. We've been working hard on this and are so grateful for you and all of your support. And as you know, this podcast is a part of the Big Silence Mental Health Foundation, where even a $1 goes a long way. If you love this pod and find it useful, fun, a part of you learning and feeling not alone, please subscribe and share and consider donating $1 this season. You can go to thebigsilence.com/donate, and together we can provide help for those in need. So if we all come together, $100 provides therapy for someone in a mental health desert or someone who can't afford it. Also, I want to note last week's pod has some great tips on how to manage your mental health during the holidays. A lot of time with families, it can be a little bit difficult to navigate. So make sure you go to last week's pod and get those tips. And on this week's podcast, it is Chase Chewning of Ever Forward Radio. I met Chase in Los Angeles when I was there a few weeks ago and went on his podcast. Really enjoyed his energy and presence. And I got to share my story and have an open conversation with him. And then he was in Austin a few weeks ago, so I got to hear more of his story. I think you'll really love this. Chase is ex-military turned health coach turned founder of Ever Forward. And, he has a great story of being in the military, losing his father at a very young age, talking PTSD, healing, and learning how to walk again twice, and about building a better body and suppressing the mind. We talk about therapy, his ketamine experience, and healing, and the love-hate of LA. Anyways, it's a great conversation. Love you, Chase, and see you on the flip. All right, Chase. So I have had the privilege of being in LA. Was it last week?
Last week.
Wow.
Quick.
Yeah.
Quick.
And going on your podcast, Ever Forward, which was a pleasure. And then you're here in Austin hanging out.
As one is. I always call Austin my mistress.
Oh.
I'm kind of always here without my wife.
Is she going to come out with you in January?
She is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We both have been to Austin many times. I'm just out here a lot more for work and other social media things, creator things that we might get into. And I just love it. I used to live in San Antonio. I was stationed there for a little while. So I've been back and forth to Austin since before Austin was cool.
So let's talk about, you were in the military.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about that.
Let's do it. Let's talk about it.
How did you make that choice?
That's a good question. I made that choice because it was kind of the one that was the least difficult to make amongst other difficult choices at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was 17 and looking to leave home, go to college, get a job, whatever that next step is for so many people. And I always kind of knew what might interest me in college, but I never had this pull, this affinity, like I want to be a doctor, or I want to be in marketing, I want to be this or that. And my dad, my uncle, my grandfather, literally every generation, there's been a service member in our family. And so I began to kind of just talk options with my dad, and he very openly and honestly just shared his experience. We went to talk to recruiters, and this was 2002, 2003 when I enlisted. 17 years old, right out of high school, and it just made the most sense for me at the time. I was like, why would I go commit tens of thousands of dollars to college if I don't know or even really interested in what I think I want to be when I grow up?
Yeah.
And this aspect of legacy, kind of carrying on the family tradition, was more appealing to me at the time. Plus, 2003, OIF, OEF were a country at war. They had a lot of incentives. And a young kid who didn't really come from a lot in the middle of nowhere, Virginia, you start dangling a lot of sign-up bonuses, you dangle a lot of healthcare, you dangle a lot of education benefits, and you kind of get this life that you maybe don't have, but you're also more unsure about your ability to create on your own. And I was like, yeah, I can do it.
Yeah, okay. Virginia, how many acres?
Almost 200. I think technically we had like 170 something, but yeah.
On that many acres in Virginia, what did you do for fun as a kid?
Oh, man. God's honest truth. We would set fires. My brother and I, we would just build little fires. We would, when it would snow, we had this, not quite a barn. It was in between like a shed and a barn, not like a full-blown barn, but bigger than a shed. And there was this roof that slanted on the backside. And when it would snow, we would climb up on the backside. We'd climb up the mountain, jump on the roof. And we had this game. It was called Whoever Falls Off the Roof First Loses. And we would just wrestle and try to throw each other. It was like, a 10-foot, maybe a little bit taller, roof. And, on the snow, we're like, oh, it's going to be safe. But definitely not safe.
Yeah.
We would build forts. We would run through the woods. We had a hillbilly four-wheeler. We had this old lawnmower that kind of crapped the bed a little bit. And so we took the mowing deck off of it to get a little bit more ground clearance. We took the governor off the engine to get a little bit more horsepower.
Of course.
And we would just ride that through the woods. Just get in trouble, really.
Yeah.
What a kid's going to do on 200 acres in the middle of nowhere?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
I'm from
the best.
Peru, Indiana, where I used to play in empty train tracks and like.
Oh yeah. So you're hanging out with the boxcar children.
Yeah.
I'm an arsonist in the middle of nowhere in the woods on my hillbilly four-wheeler.
Yes. That was your training for the
trying
military.
to kill my brother. Exactly. Yeah. I was being groomed for the military.
Yeah.
I didn't know it. Yeah.
So then you get into the military, and how long were you serving?
I enlisted for 6 years, active duty right out of the gate. It was kind of, I had to go for the max initial commitment with the job that I had and the contract that they gave me with all the bonuses and everything. So at 17 years old, I was committed until like 23, 24.
And you did the whole time.
I did. And it's weird timing because literally this year, 2023, maybe a few months ago, my original plan was, 37, you do 20 years, you can retire. 37 years old, that's so young. I could retire, get all these amazing benefits, move on to the next phase of my life, have a pension, have benefits. And this year, I would have done that. I just turned 38, but my original life plan would have wrapped up right now, which is a weird thing to think about. How many of us have a quantifiable timeline of our job, our life, and then you cross that threshold, but your plan completely was changed. Yeah. And so that's a weird thing for me. I'm wrapping my head around this year. But in there, I was training for a deployment, got injured. Injuries were so severe that I wound up getting pulled from any opportunity to deploy, of course, but also even got pulled out of my job.
Couldn't you not walk? Wasn't there? Or is that it?
Yeah. So
at one point,
like long story long,
we got time.
So a lot of things were going through my life at that time. And like I said, I joined the military because a lot of this inspiration, a lot of this influence from my dad. And he wasn't the one like, hey, Chewning serve, any son of mine's going to serve in the military. It wasn't like that. It was just, hey, here are the options and, do the one that calls to you the most. But also we didn't have a lot of money. And I'll never forget, there was this one time when it kind of came down to the wire, like I have to either apply to college. I got to make a decision about the military. Time was working against me here. And my dad said this thing I'll never forget. And he just looked at me, he goes, Chase, if you want to go to college, I'll figure out how to make it happen financially. And that really just stuck with me. I kind of had something click and I go, I don't want for me to not know what I want to do in college, I don't want to be a burden to my family, especially not financially, because I know that we don't have a whole lot. And so that was enough to kind of make me decide to go into the military. I was very close with my dad. About a few months into my contract, I find out that he is terminal. He gets diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and it really sent me spiraling. Just kind of really gave up on life. He passed away about a year later. I was 19 years old. Just really suppressed all grief, every negative emotion, all the hatred, the fear, the sorrow. And it kind of began to just spill over. And I just like, you know what? I really just think not waking up one day would be better than what I'm feeling now.
Do you think, I know you talked about being in the military and possibly death would be the end. Would you say through when you're deployed, or did you ever consider taking your own life?
I never considered taking my own life.
Yeah.
But I definitely questioned how much I wanted to live. I was in such pain. I was in such denial. I was so confused about what I was supposed to do. I was at times, thousands of miles away from my family. I'm the big brother, the oldest of three. So I got this older brother syndrome. And I was like, who's going to take care of my family? My dad's gone. What about my brother and my sister? What about my mom? What about my grandparents? What about all this? I did this, I then began to take a lot of that extra weight on of, was this really my choice? I did this for dad. I did this for my family legacy. Do I even really want to be here doing this? And, a lot of things clicked. Like I said, this is 2003. Well, he passed away in 2005. So the height of OEF. It was very easy, very easy for me to find myself in harm's way should I want to.
Can you explain OAF, OE? Because
Sorry,
most people don't know them.
Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Okay.
And my job, I was an intelligence specialist, and I specialized in Russian studies. I was a Russian linguist, Russian intelligence specialist. So my job, unless I volunteered a unique skill set that I had in the intelligence community, it was unlikely that I was going to be deployed because I was assigned to other missions. And so I decided that I wanted to. I volunteered a couple times for some deployments. And in order to go over there, you have to go through a lot of different trainings. You got to go through all these different things. You got to do war games. And so I was just anything and everything I could do to make myself more appealing to command, to let me deploy, I was doing. And on the surface, it seemed like, man, Chewning, he's really working his ass off. Chewning, he's committed. Chewning's a leader. Chewning's getting promoted. For anybody in the military that knows, I made E6 in technically just under 5 years.
What's E6?
E6 is a staff sergeant. It's like mid-management basically in like corporate America.
Okay.
In most jobs in military, E6 in under 5 years, right at 5 years, is a pretty difficult thing to do. It's possible, but you got to really want it. And I did. But again, outside looking in, I wanted it for the wrong reasons. They thought I was doing it because I'm a committed soldier.
Yeah.
I'm going to do all this stuff. But I did it because if I do this, I can probably deploy. They'll actually let me volunteer for these other missions. And then, what happens over there happens over there. And in pursuit of that, during war game training, I suffered the career-ending injuries that I did. Tore my hamstring. L4 and L5 vertebrae kind of went one way. The rest of my back kind of went another. It wasn't even anything. It wasn't like I got hit by a truck or, when I say all this, what I went through really did suck. People might have assumptions, but I basically was just leading an ambush through this war game training scenario, and just wrong movement, wrong speed, wrong direction, everything wrong, just working against me. But looking back, I really do think something else was working against me, but really in my favor, in order to snap my shit up so that I didn't go down that path. And then wound up having to have both of my femurs reconstructed.
Oh, wow.
So I got pulled out of that training, pulled out of that deployment opportunity, pulled out of my job, pulled out of my base, and transferred to this medical hold unit where for the next year and a half almost, I was just a patient. I was going through surgery. So they would, from like the top of my quad, or like midway quad up to the top of my glute. I got massive incisions, surgical dislocation, removal of my femur, reshape it, put it back in. Got 2 rods in the hip.
And were you back in the U.S. then, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this was all. I underwent all of this in Brooke Army Medical Center down the road, San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a medical hold unit there, and that's where I was for about a year and a half, just in the hospital,
Rehabbing. Yeah.
in bed, pool therapy, physical therapy. I had no job, no responsibility other than just
healing.
Heal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they're like, you know what? You're too broken. After all of that, literally got to the point to where I learned how to walk again twice. And then I was unable to meet certain physical criteria. I'm deemed non-deployable. Once that happens in the military, at least when I was in, they have no use for you. So now I can joke and say that I overachieved and I retired at 6 years instead of 20 because they medically retired me.
I want to go into the aftermath of that, but how many languages do you speak if you were working with Russian? Like,
I'm still fluent in Russian. I'm definitely getting a little rusty. Yeah, you should go over whiskey.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been out now for 11, 12 years, but I really, it's important to me. I love that the government spent tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on my clearance and language skills and stuff like that, which is weird that I chose this job, but they gave me a $20,000 sign-up bonus. I could barely pass high school Spanish. I like my shout out Mrs. Clark. She literally went through a special, just me and her, summer school program for Spanish. She's like, Chase, you're not going to make it next year. But hey, you dangle 20 grand in front of somebody, you'll learn a language.
I'll learn Russian. So
English, Russian. I can understand a good amount of Farsi, Persian Farsi. My wife is Iranian.
Okay.
And so being around her and her family for like 10 years now, I can speak a little Farsi. I can understand more. So 2.5 languages, we'll say. In Spanish, I'm actually pretty good at Spanish now.
I know. I took Spanish for 8 years in my advanced classes. I guess I was really smart as a kid, but I don't speak it now. I can understand it.
I can understand more than I can speak. Yeah.
And then I'm Ukrainian, second generation. And
That's right.
I can say Dobry den, Dobry večer.
Молодец, ребята, молодец. Молодец. Well, it's a little different than Russian. I can understand a good amount of Ukrainian. I can understand a good amount of Serbo-Croatian. Czech, all that.
Yeah. I know. I do want to learn another language. Or just, I feel like if I just took Spanish classes, it would all come back to you.
Probably.
Yeah. So you are done with military. And you're like, what the heck am I doing? Did you feel like that? Did you have, like, in your mind, you can't, finish your goal with the military. So what do you do? And in your head, what are you thinking?
At the time, I really just viewed it as this mission ended.
Yeah.
I was given orders for the next mission. Go execute. It's funny, once you're out, maybe while you're in, but once you're out of the military, you really do, I'm joking here, but brainwash. Like you're so trained from such, I joined, like I said, at 17. So these are very formidable years for any human.
Yeah.
Process that with transition from home to becoming an adult, living away from home, navigating loss, all these things that every human goes through. But then you add military training on top of that for day after day, year after year for like 6 years. I didn't process any of this until many years later. And so at the time I was like, okay, all right, cool. I'm broken. Okay, cool. What does that mean? Where do I go? Tell me what to do. So they discharged me, gave me my paperwork, said sign out. And then so
you're on your way.
The next day, I kind of, it's coming. You go through a med board process. And so I kind of knew it's coming probably like 2 to 3 months out.
Yeah.
So I dropped my final PTO, we'll call it, my terminal leave. And I signed out of base and I threw my cane in the back seat and strapped the wheelchair to my SUV and kind of just drove off base and left that life in the rearview mirror. And I drove from Brooke Army Medical Center, San Antonio, back home to Virginia. And that's where my family was. And kind of just, shacked up, chilled for a little bit. But about like a month into that, I again, didn't really realize this during the time, but I definitely kind of had some things click after the fact that I just somehow was not ready or willing to accept that you're broken and there's no use for you.
Mm.
And so I enrolled in school to study exercise science.
What kind of school?
Virginia Commonwealth University.
Okay.
VCU. Go Rams, go. And it was weird because when I went to orientation and all these, open house things, I'm this 23, 24-year-old kid using a cane and also there with his mom to help him because he's literally physically incapable of kind of navigating himself. And they're like, you want to study what? Exercise science?
Was that because you wanted to learn more about your body and how to heal?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like you've been through all of the torture and you're quote unquote damaged.
Yeah.
And you want to figure out more about the anatomy and how you can make yourself stronger and better.
There's got to be another way. Yeah. From the hillbilly four-wheeler to running amok up and down the mountains of Virginia to I played baseball and sports all throughout middle school and high school, and then to be in the most physically demanding job, one of the most physically demanding jobs for years, to have that all come to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
My mind and my body just didn't know what to do. Like, there's no way this is it.
Yeah.
And so I was told, you'll probably be on this cane for many, many, many moon to come, get used to this kind of life now. And I just could not process that. So I decided to, and during this downtime, a lot of downtime at home, rehabilitating, I began to kind of get interested in the human body a little bit because I was like, well, I don't want to gain a bunch of weight. I don't want to, atrophy, all these things. So I began to read and research a lot of things around nutrition. And this is when the green movement was kind of big. And I was just understanding what a well life looked like and felt like. And I got really, really curious about it. So I decided, hey, you know what? Chase, you signed up for college benefits, use them.
Yeah.
So I did. And about like a month or so after leaving the military, if that, I was enrolled in my first class at exercise science. And through learning the human body, anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, strength training, chemistry, exercise lab, all this stuff, I got so much better, through those years, coupled with the rehabilitation that the amazing VA center was giving me. I was like, hold up, I think I might be getting better. And more than that, I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. And that got me curious about, maybe this could be my next career. Maybe I could do something with this because I enjoy it. I'm really also kind of like developing a great story that I began to connect more with people in like internships and stuff. I would have clients, coaching clients, training clients. And once I began to kind of tell them my story that I just shared here, I saw how kind of like motivational it was, inspirational. Also, it would cut the bullshit with a lot of people that I didn't work out last week, man. I stubbed my toe in the middle of the night, and I'm just, my toe. And I'm like, yeah, I had to learn how to walk again.
You're like, yeah.
And I'm over here in the gym. Yeah, exactly. So I realized that something clicked and I was like, hey, you can do this for you, but also you can do this to help other people. And then it kind of just became a thing.
I have a question that popped in my head. So you're starting college at 23?
24.
24.
24 technically, yeah.
How was that? Just anyone because just people well, just most
being old on college campus.
Old as, yeah. I just am curious because I feel like a lot when you start college at 18. You start college at 18 and you're not really don't know about military much. You're not educated in that or such. And then you're starting at 24. Like, was that difficult for you? Was, college is typically community. I'm a two-time college dropout, so I don't know much.
Oh, good for you.
I don't know much about college or anything. But I would just feel like if you're doing it, like, did you feel like an outcast or do you feel like you could make friends?
Really good question. And another big reason why I enrolled so quickly in school and why this school, because of friends, because of community.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the oldest of three. My brother, he's 4 years younger than me. So by the time that I got out of the military and was enrolling in school, he was graduating high school and was also enrolling in college for the first time as well. So he was going to school I had sort of already kind of gotten to know some of his friends from I would come home on leave and, I would see his friends. And so like I had some familiarity, and a big, big part of why I struggled and a lot of other service members struggle when you transition out from military to civilian life is you lose that support system. You lose that community to some degree. And I was like, oh, community good. This is a safe space. And so I did it. And, I was going to classes and going to campus and all this stuff around with my brother and my friends. And so that transition was a big help, transitioning to more kind of like that community.
Yeah, I just was wondering if there's like bullying or
No.
Okay, that's good.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, I think, it sometimes worked in my favor of like he's mature. Like,
like, look at that older man.
Exactly. Older man, 24. Geez. But it was interesting.
So, okay. So you are into fitness. You're going to college. Did you go all 4 years and graduate?
I did. Yeah. Undergrad there. And then somehow I got tricked into going to grad school.
Oh, wow. Look at you.
Yeah. Damn, corporate life got me. Yeah.
So when we first talked, you talked about building your body and suppressing your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that?
I like to give myself a little credit. This is, I guess, the ego talking, but also was a very necessary thing for me to do at the time because of everything I just went through. I was so focused on the body that I thought if my body improves, that's an improvement because of what I'm rehabilitating from.
And you're not talking just like aesthetic, like healing improves.
Like being able to not use a cane.
Yes.
And walk around. Being able to be active, being able to, get in and out of my car without help, things like that. But then, I caught the fitness bug and I not only rehabilitated, but I was able to like shout out Big Daddy, like I wiped my own ass. And so I was seeing all these results, feeling all these results. And I also realized that this can be a much greater feeling. This can be a great positive new thing. Objectively, everybody will agree if you work on rehabilitation, work on your body, work on your health. These are good things that I don't have to deal with grief, that I don't have to deal with processing the death of my father. I don't have to deal with any of all that. I don't have to deal with two of my closest friends that I served with that wound up killing themselves because they couldn't transition out as easily as I did. Different walks for sure. And fast forward a few years, like that worked for me pretty well. I was stronger than I ever thought I would be. I was doing things in real life and in the gym and in yoga and all this stuff that, doctors told me that I probably would never be able to do. And I was so happy and content. I was getting stronger. I was getting leaner. I was, doing all these things. I was very embedded in the fitness and early days of like fitness social media community. But then one day, all of that mental, emotional stuff finally had enough of not being listened to, of not being prioritized, of not being respected in the same way that I was with the physical body. And it began to just resurface and resurface and resurface. I would black out. I would have panic attacks. I would have to leave movie theaters. I would be uncontrollable behind the wheel of a car after hearing a certain song. And I went years with undiagnosed PTSD. Around the death of my father. I would have these triggers that would just send me, I would black out, have panic attacks. I would literally, the one that really did it over the edge for me was my then girlfriend, now wife. We were at my apartment before we got married. We were just dating and I like blacked out. We're watching a movie. Next thing I know, I'm on the couch and she's like trying to resuscitate me. I'm convulsing. I'm like, my chest is getting concave. Like I'm hyperventilating, all this stuff. We were watching a movie.
Was it a movie that triggered you or?
There was a death scene.
Okay.
Where this person's on a hospital bed and they bring the curtain over. I'm pretty sure it was Divergent, if memory serves.
Okay, stay away from Divergent.
Yeah, it's a trigger warning. I'm good now. And they brought this sheet over this body.
Yeah.
Just like they did my dad.
Were you there when your dad passed?
So when he passed, like literally the moment he passed, no. But I was there. I got, what's it called? Emergency leave if your family files this thing through American Red Cross, the military will let you out and extend your leave, as needed. So luckily, I was able to be there the last couple of days that he was alive. I was in the hospital with him for like 3 days, slept maybe a couple hours. Long story short, went home to try to take a nap a little bit early in the morning. I was asleep for maybe an hour. I got the call that he passed away.
God, that's the same with my mom. I was there with her for 3 days, and then it was late. I was alone with her, and my aunt came, but then I was alone with her, and then Bobby drove from Austin to San Diego where she was, and he went with me, and then I was like, I need to sleep. So we went back to the hotel room, and I got the call. But I was 3 days, but I was so happy that I could be there. But those thoughts, like that, let's talk about grief, like those images. And so this was 2009, right, for you? Or
so all these panic attacks and all this stuff, this was 2015.
Okay.
Yeah. He passed in 2005. I'll wrap up that point by saying, was working on the exterior self for a long time, denying the interior self, my mind, my heart, refusing to process trauma and grief until it just kind of came pouring out of me. And at that moment, then she was like, luckily she's a nurse, and she was like kind of like reviving me. And she's like, what's happening? What's going on? And we kind of unpacked it a little bit. And she had kind of seen some glimpses of this throughout the relationship. We're like 2 years in. And it was like this ultimatum, honestly, for like the most loving ultimatum I've ever received. And without it, I don't know if I ever would have really taken the steps necessary to begin working on my mental health. She's like, Chase, like, I love you, but you need to love you more. Like you're doing all these other things. Like you look great. I just got promoted at work. But if you can't sit here with me and watch a movie, if you can't drive your car and listen to a song, if we can't go to a movie theater without you freaking out, like, she wasn't saying it like, hey, this is a problem, like what's wrong with you? But like there are clear things that your body is telling you, that your mind is telling you, your heart is telling you. And if you're not going to take that seriously, then I don't know if there's a place for me here. And I cared more about losing her than I did taking care of myself at the time. Because I'm so good at compartmentalizing. I can stuff it down. I can do all this stuff. I can soldier on. I can just shut that off and do what the mission requires. And so that really woke me up. And at that moment, I decided, like, oh shit, all right, let me talk to somebody. Let me talk to her. Let me talk to my brother. I started journaling. I just began to just outpour as much as possible.
Did you also have PTSD from the military? That's what I would imagine. Or do you just
compartmentalize?
Like, that's a long word for me right now. Yes.
Sometimes I don't work good either. I have received a diagnosis for PTSD, particularly around the death of my father. The more that I have unpacked that, the more that I have navigated that, and it's really the last like 3 years, the more that I have fully begun my healing journey through that, other areas of my military service are really resurfacing. So like I said, I didn't deploy. So that never happened for me. But a lot of the missions that my work supported, a lot of things that I did in my job, I'm the guy in the movies, behind the scenes, I'm like, I'm the one figuring all this stuff out. Then we pass back the information for the people, like boots on the ground. And so a lot of what I witnessed, a lot of what I saw, a lot of what I heard, a lot of my work for quite some time was with the real evil of the world.
Yeah.
Hearing it, seeing it day in, day out. Things that you see on the news are the G versions of things that we get.
Yeah.
And so the more that I am removing the trauma, the biggest trauma of my life, or at least what impacted me the most, I'm realizing that there's a lot of other stuff that I did see, that I did go through, that I did support, that imprinted on me in bigger ways than I realize. Yeah. Also, my injuries. I went through, big fan of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. One of my sessions that I went through, ketamine assisted psychotherapy, I thought that I was coming out of the journey, but I was realizing I was waking up in kind of like a past experience, and I was realizing how scared that I was waking up in the hospital from these surgeries alone.
Yeah,
I was realizing how painful like the physical trauma that my body went through, like to have my about 12, 13-inch incisions, to have bones removed and restructured, and to be having to go through rehabilitation for months and months and months, like that's a major physical trauma.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much that really did imprint on me and how much I still need to kind of unpack that. That's the thing about trauma work and emotional healing. You're like, cool, made it through.
I'm fine.
Check that off. Like, shit, there's more under here. All right.
Oh, it is held in your body. Yeah. It is held. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of realizing more and more what else is in there to kind of navigate.
So your healing process, PTSD, panic attacks, what were your tools? So you did ketamine treatments.
Only until recently, yeah.
When did you first do ketamine treatments?
My birthday, so October 5th, 2021.
Wow, so brand new. How many sessions?
Ooh, I've gone through close to 20 now.
Okay, yeah. I have some friends that are doing that, but they go once and they think they're going to just be fine. And I've had the founders of Better You on here. And they're like, no, you can't. You just don't do ketamine once.
You can have a profound experience.
Yeah.
You can even have a significantly healing experience in one. I've been there.
Yeah.
But I mean, the science will show us that, really the protocol is 5 to 6. Most people say 6, and I believe in 6 because there's just things get uncovered. The neural crosstalk and neuroplasticity that happens, like you're literally rewiring your brain, you're understanding things differently, and you quite literally are a different person. And so then you need to revisit the old experiences, revisit the trauma through this new lens now. Especially with ketamine, it's really that succession protocol is the sweet spot.
Yeah. Have you done EMDR?
What is that?
Eye movement. I'm going to say it wrong, but it's a...
No.
So I did that for trauma with growing up with my mom and everything. And it's, I did like 9 sessions it's talk therapy plus the, you connect to a machine that goes into your brainwaves and there's a podcast on here. I always say this.
There's some science and stuff in there.
There's science. Just Google EMDR. But I did a podcast, Gabby Bernstein. Go to that episode. She explains it so well.
Fascinating.
But yeah, that helped me to not get triggered for certain things my mom would say or do. And it really helped me through trauma.
Very happy to hear that for you. That's amazing. That's a cool thing about once you commit to, like me, for example, and you, there is this big thing that we know we have been avoiding or we know that we want to work on.
Yeah.
And then once you work on that, it's great. Hopefully you make progress. It sounds like you have. I definitely have. I just a couple of years ago would not be able to talk about this at all.
Yeah.
But even if you don't have that, this is where I think a lot of people should pay attention, because you assume or you really do an honest scan of your life and no physical injury, no mental trauma, wasn't sexually abused, my dad didn't die, none of this stuff, But if you really begin to kind of just first recognize that there is this quadrant of your being that is the mental self, there are things in there that you can't really believe that you are fully aware of.
Yeah.
There are things that we experience in life day to day that just imprint on us in passive ways as a coping mechanism. If we had to cope and process and navigate and, push through every negative or even not even negative, just any non-positive human experience, we wouldn't make it past like 2 years old.
Yeah.
That's the beauty about being human. But safety mechanisms are there just for survival. They're not there to help you thrive. Only until you face them or just face that part and really recognize that there is a part of me that is receiving all of that. I would like to learn more about it. I would like to unpack it. I would like to just let it kind of open up and share with me, because I promise you, if you make the intention and you set the space, things will come up. The work will unfold for you.
And then when you do the work, and it's so important because you're a man talking about men's mental health.
I am a man.
You are a man. And then addressing your own mental health. And then how does that affect your marriage?
Oh. My wife is very, very happy for me. We've been married for about 7 years now, but it's one of those things. She's like, oh God, now he won't shut up his feelings. She's like, I'll go back to that day on the couch and just be like, maybe say something different. Like now I won't shut up about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah.
Once we find fitness, right?
Mhm.
It's the best. We're the annoying health nut. We're the annoying gym rat that just can't get enough of the newbie gains. Like, oh my God, have you tried this? Have you done this smoothie? Have you done this workout?
Yeah.
Have you experienced this diet, this protocol, whatever? Because you're on like, oh my God, I feel amazing. I'm getting to feel more amazing. I'm looking better. My labs are improving, all this stuff. I didn't believe that any of that was true for mental health either. I'm like, I feel okay. Like, no. Like, how do you feel to your core, to your soul? Is your soul crying out for attention? Is your soul tired? What parts of it are you consciously and unconsciously suppressing? And all of us go through it. And it was just the floodgate. Once I did, because I got these mental health newbie gains like we do in fitness, I was like, oh, wow. I didn't know that I was suppressing that. I didn't know that I could feel so much lighter in the day. I didn't know that I could feel happier. And I feel like I'm a pretty happy guy. I didn't know. And so then it's like, oh my God, I want to tell everybody. I want to tell everybody, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is why I did it. This is how it's helping me. Because same thing we do, especially, so, I'm a health coach. I worked in clinic. I do social media. I've done these things for years. Like that was my role and still is. Now it's like, why would I deny a client or an audience member, a peer, a friend, a family member? Why would I deny them any other piece of information that can help them move forward in their life? I can give you a workout plan. I can talk to you about diet and nutrition. I can help you understand how the body works and all this stuff. And we can come together on a plan that's going to work for the exterior.
Yeah.
But honestly, none of that shit really matters as much until you get up here and down here, the head and the heart in alignment.
Yeah.
And you let both of them speak and let both of them come to the dinner table. It's life-changing. And so for that, it's definitely helped because we're married and we've done therapy together, and it's even more unique because my wife, psychedelic nurse practitioner, when I first started on this journey of healing, she was my medicine woman. And so it's like, boop, boop, have a nice trip, baby. And so she's my medical provider, but also my wife. And I'm like, I'm on this journey and I'm crying. I'm there with the therapist. And she's just like, another day at the job for her.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't talk about this when you come home. Leave this at the clinic. This is a billable hour.
I know the opening. Yeah, I know all about the physical and being in shape in this, and then So Bobby and I have been married for 7 years as well.
Yeah,
and then I started the big silence when I finally wanted to talk about my mental health, my mother's mental health, and now I'm just like, bleh, over
like,
talking.
It's like, honey, I thought this was called the big silence. The big silence.
But
yeah, I'm joking. I love you, baby. But she's like, seriously, shut up.
No, but that is. But then you're talking about the unloading of. I think the more you talk about it and your mental health and what's going on, and destigmatizing therapy treatments, and you just feel so much lighter. And it's really a beautiful thing.
It is, and that transcends. I can tell you. Having an online presence for like 10 years now, at least 8, nothing I have ever done, nothing I have ever shared in video and written in audio format on the interwebs has come close to the feedback that I get when, over the last 3 years now, I share this part of my wellness, my well-being, my journey. There are just some things that, like, you can look at a photo online, like, okay, cool, you've been working out more. I see your body composition. Okay, cool. Numbers are going up on the gym. Cool. But when you look at somebody through a device here, and you're just like, wow, like, what do you want? That is the feedback that I get. It's this lightness. And to share with you, I'll say, long story short, what I owe a lot of that to is actually my second ketamine journey. I came out of that journey a world lighter. The very end of this experience, this is the coolest part. I got to share this part. In the journey, at the end, all of a sudden, I'm just this light. I'm my soul, my entity, my being. I consider it to be my soul. and I'm passing through every single other person, not as a human form, but their essence, their being in light form that I have ever interacted with in my entire life, whether it was a one-off passing or a best friend. If they contributed to my life in some capacity, I was basically crowd surfing as this entity, passing through all of them. And then I get to the front, and it's my dad. And he's there with me. And he was with me on the first journey too, which is crazy. And he's there with me. And there were no words exchanged. There's no speaking. It's just this knowing of, Chase, look at this life. Look at all these people that you have interacted with, that you have supported, that you have lifted up, that they have lifted you up. Now we're at a moment to like honor that and now look back at it. And when I did, I saw my world. I saw literally a planet. Like, I'm out in outer space, right? I saw a planet. And then I turned back to him, and the light that he was, it's almost like this Iron Man moment came into like my chest. And I felt, even in this journey, in this altered state of consciousness, Karena, I felt like a planet was crushing me. I felt the weight of a world just come down on me. And I processed that for a moment. And then my father's entity kind of like we separated. And I interpreted this as, Chase, you no longer need to keep living in that world. You no longer need to go through your life staying attached to the past, looking for me, being in pain for me. Because like, I'm good, bro. Like, I'm good. I'm on the other side. I'm no longer in pain. When he left me, I felt that world, literally a planet, escape me. I get goosebumps talking about this. And I turned, and then I faced this bright white plain planet, this whole new world. And I interpreted it as, Chase, it's finally time to start living your life. Look at this. Look at this life before you. Look, you don't need, it's all still there. Just because you're turning and facing and building a life for yourself now doesn't mean you're abandoning the one that you're coming from. And so I was able to let go of so much. And I was able to also know that no matter where I go, no matter what I do, my father is still with me.
Yeah.
And I came out of that experience. And to this day, in person, online, there's just people who knew me then, before, and people who know me now. Like, you're literally you're Chase, you're so much lighter.
I know. I love hearing.
What is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's what I attribute that to.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I shared, I believe, on your podcast about the medium.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like,
zesty. Yeah. I mean, there's something to this stuff, you know?
Yeah. And, but it is, I think, as children who lose their parents, as we all do and will, and to be released from that and be like, it's okay to live your life.
To be released. Wow. Yeah. To be released from the chains that we don't realize we kind of made in some ways, you know, that there's this analogy I use all the time, that I made my life about moving forward, ever forward. This phrase from my father, right? I'll say, okay, I'm the motivated guy. I'm the go forward guy. I'm the, physical, mental resiliency. But all I was doing was just adding another link to the chain that was weighted, this big ball at the end. Yeah, I was moving forward and progressing, but I was still attached to that pain.
Carrying it.
I was carrying it. I was just adding more links.
Yeah.
It wasn't until everything we just went through that I decided, like, you know what? Like, cut the damn chain. It's still there. I think that's a big part of healing that at least I struggled with, that I thought, I think prevented me from kind of going through healing sooner or exploring different modalities. I'm not saying you got to go through ketamine therapy. Hell, I've had an out-of-body experience saying goodbye to my father in the hospital just through breath work.
Yeah.
Just journal. I mean, the things that come out of stream of consciousness are crazy. I think that's a big part of what people struggle with, is that we think by healing, we're going to leave them behind, especially if it's like a loss. I don't want to get over it. I don't want to get over it because that means, am I going to keep them with me? How am I going to remember them? I'm here to tell you that it's just really, it's about re-navigating that relationship. You're not abandoning the person that you love. You're not letting go of that memory. You're creating a new relationship to that experience. One that allows you to move forward in life and know that it's all still there and you can revisit it, but you are no longer chained to it.
Let's talk about Ever Forward.
Dun, dun, dun.
them on Ever Forward Radio. I am a guest on there in January.
Yeah.
Don't
Very
miss
excited to get that one
it.
out.
So you started Ever Forward.
Yeah. I keep Dad with me here. Little tattoo on my arm.
And that was something that your dad always spoke about, right?
Yeah. Coming to find out, he definitely lived it and applied it. But Dad, you weren't that clever. He adopted it. His time in the military, he was National Guard before he went active duty.
Mm-hmm.
Active duty, he was with one of the most badass units in the U.S. Army, 101st Airborne. But National Guard, he was our guard unit back home in Virginia. It was the 116th Infantry Regiment. And their unit insignia, like, every military patch there, was Ever Forward.
Yeah.
And so he picked it up from his time in the service, and he literally brought his work home. He brought this mantra, this philosophy, this war cry to the home front. And he joined, I was like 5 years old, maybe. So from 5 years old, I heard Ever Forward, Ever Forward. And you kind of just think okay, I guess my parent found this cool new catchphrase and they're trying to raise me right and, have a good attitude and all this stuff. But it wasn't until he was diagnosed, and it wasn't until I came home for the first time on leave when he was in hospital. He was in the hospital, not hospice, the VA clinic back in Roanoke, Virginia. And I knew he was going to be in that bed until he died. Mm-hmm. And then I would just look at him. With ALS, it's a very cruel disease. For anyone that doesn't know, it's amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And some people last years. In my father's case, it was about 15, 18 months. And you literally just decay. Your body just atrophies away and you wither away. You lose your ability to speak, usually pretty quickly. And my dad was this big, burly infantry guy. And so to see him wither away 20, 50, 80 pounds, like just losing all this weight, becoming just this boy again in a hospital bed. But then to look in his eyes and know that he's just like, I know he's cracking jokes in his head. He's looking at me when he sees me come through the door. And he never once complained. He was every nurse, every hospital member that worked with him. I get like happy tears now because it's this is another cool part about healing is that you can think back to these moments that normally you would want to die. Yeah. And you're just like, damn, like, Dad, you were doing the thing, every nurse, every person ever that worked with my dad for his last 4 or 5 months in the hospital, they all came to his funeral. Oh. I mean, so he lived it. Yeah. He had every right to complain and every right to just be angry and bitter. But he, up until his dying breath, was just like, all right, whatever this is, I'm going to figure it out, put one foot in front of the other for myself, but also for the example for my family, for my example for my community, for my example for other people, for strangers that can look at me. And this is all my assumption. He never said this to me, but it has to be true. It was like, you know what? There is someone who is suffering the most immense amount of daily suffering humanly possible to a degree. And it's just a matter of waiting until you die. Mm-hmm. But look at his attitude. Yeah. And so I was like, all right. So after he passed away and I began to really kind of unpack all this and I understood finally what Ever Forward meant. Like so many phrases years later, I'm sure we're like, all right, Mom, Dad, I hear you. I get it now. Come with age, come with maturity, come with wisdom. I decided, you know what? I want to carry this forward. I want to keep a part of him with me. And as I was getting more advanced in my career as a clinical health coach and doing more in health and fitness and social media, I discovered podcasts and I decided to do one. And the only name that ever came to me was Ever Forward Radio.
Love it.
And it's all about, through physical and mental resiliency, what are topics, guests, authors, Karenas, people that do just that, that embody this mantra of, all right, this was my plan. Here's what's before me. How am I going to move forward? How am I going to figure this out?
I love that. And I am so excited to have met you through Ellie.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. I love the internet. I just like people come into your life and then they come back into your life. Like, oh shit, cool. Now we can be friends again with more people.
Yeah. No, seriously, the internet, even like here in Austin, you hear like you see someone that you kind of know but don't know, they're in Austin and you can DM. You're like,
hey, I've been stalking you.
Yeah, here, come, let's hang out. And podcasting is so fun because you get to meet cool people that you would never meet. And especially in a world that was so separated for so many years and in isolation, to be able to be in real life and have conversations. And I love that you, with your podcast, you only do in person, which I do want to switch to that. Or
I think 99%. It's always great. It's always my priority.
Yeah. Well, Chase, thank you for being on the Big Silence podcast.
My pleasure.
Any other shout outs? Where do we find you? Everforward podcast, obviously.
Yeah. If anything I've said resonates with, you guys listening, watching, if learning how to move forward in your day-to-day life is of interest to you, then come check out Everforward Radio, 2 episodes a week. And then, so I say this, the podcast is kind of my long format way of unpacking unique areas of life and well-being. And then my social media is kind of like the day-to-day application. So I'm literally no holds barred, the worst of me, the best of me, the hacks, the supplements, the mindset, the meditation, the antics, the dumb dad humor, like literally everything, because it's healing for me, it's therapy for me. And then when I find something that strikes a chord, that's when I sit down for a topic myself or a expert guest, to kind of just dive deeper. I don't have answers. I have next steps. I have more questions for people because I'm still trying to find answers to life myself.
You have answers and experiences, and that's what it is all about, sharing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So everyone knows that they are not alone in all of these experiences.
Come on down.
Yeah.
Room for everybody at the EF table. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, every way to find Chase is in the show notes. And thank you.
The Big Silence. The Big Silence.